The only man standing between Duke and Kentucky and a monopoly on NBA talent, Scott Drew. How in the world has he built one of the best factories for NBA talent?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, Cam Stuart. This is Locked On Baylor. We are talking some hoops today. Happy birthday to anyone who really loves spacing out their gifts between the year. It is June 25th. We're going to talk about the newest addition to the Baylor basketball staff. It's a name that you're pretty familiar with, and I really like this trend that this program is going in. Is that right? Is in right now. I also jumped on with the Locked On Lakers guys to talk about Cameron Carr and what he brings to the NBA, and really about what he learned and how he grew at Baylor and what makes him a great player. But we're going to start with just how freaking amazing this is. Like, let's stop and take a second here, because I know it wasn't a good year for Baylor basketball. Last year wasn't a very good year for Baylor basketball, but that's in part because our expectations have been raised. 5 years ago, they were the national champions, right? There's a certain standard we're talking about at Baylor now. But it's incredible to think that that was the 7th first-round pick for Baylor in the last 6 NBA drafts. 7th, man. That's the same number as Kentucky in the same time frame. That's the same number as UConn in the same time frame. That's crazy. Just taking stock of this for a second. 7 first-round picks in the last 6 years. North Carolina has 3. Gonzaga has 3. Kansas, almighty Kansas, the one everybody's looking up to in this conference, they've only got 4. Duke has 12, which is pretty outstanding. But the fact that Baylor's in that conversation, guys, is pretty unbelievable. And once again, it's a chance for us to stop, pause, and think about how truly unthinkable it is what Scott Drew has made this program into. And what he has made them into is a genuine NBA factory. From 1998 to 2010, there was not a single first-round pick that came out of Baylor. In fact, before 2010, there were only 3 first-round picks ever out of Baylor. Since then, they've had 10 since 2010. And again, the aforementioned 7 in the last 6 years. Like, I don't think, like, we got to reiterate here, like, nobody else is doing that. Duke is the only other program that's doing it at the clip that Baylor is right now. And when you look at active players in the NBA, like, again, it's Duke and Kentucky, and then it's Baylor. Like, that's what we're talking about. They have more active NBA players right now than Villanova. They have the same number as UConn. Like, Baylor's a basketball program was a complete wasteland, even before the scandal. Like, it had not been competitive in a long time, and it was not a producer of talent. And look, I get it. If would we trade being an NBA factory for being in the national championship conversation every year? Yes, totally. No program would do the other side of that trade. But on the flip side, we're still in a pretty successful decade and a half of Baylor basketball. There's no reason they can't turn it around as quickly as this year. Not national championship good, but back to being a contender in the Big 12 kind of good. There's no reason to believe they can't get back to that pretty soon here. And what you have right now is still, even after 2 bad seasons by your standard, a pretty good hook for the best talent in in college basketball, both on the floor and on the sidelines. You put guys in the NBA all the time. All the time. Again, like at the clip that Kentucky and Duke is doing it. If I had told you that 10 years ago, you would have laughed me off the stage, man. You would have thought I was crazy to be like, yeah, 10 years from now. Oh, yeah, you're watching this Karl Anthony Towns 38-0 Kentucky team. Oh, and Duke wins the national championship with 3 first-round picks on their team. 3 lottery picks. Same thing with Kentucky. Oh, yeah, in 10 years, Baylor's going to be right there with them. That Baylor team with Kenny Cherry that just lost in the first round to Georgia State. And I burned my bracket in the sink in my house in Rockland, Massachusetts. Yeah, 10 years from now, Baylor is going to be, in terms of NBA talent, right there with them. And they're actually going to have, between now and that 10 years from now, Baylor's going to have more national championships than both those programs combined. Again, Looney Tunes, like, that's not real. That can't be possible. And yet Scott Drew has made that possible. And Cameron Carr is just another in this line. And quite frankly, I think he can be a legit NBA player, like one of the best of that group. And he fell to 24. Lakers fans are like, we got to steal at 24. He's the prototypical kind of NBA player. And I'll talk more about him in the next segment when we talk with the Lakers guys there about what Cameron Carr brings to the table. But, I mean, just another one that you sold a dream to. And here's the thing. You could talk about the one and dones, right? Keontae George was a massive prospect. I mean, the biggest prospect Baylor had gotten at the time. Tunde Yesufu, 5-star. VJ Edgecombe, biggest prospect Baylor ever got. And it's easy to point to those and say, well, yeah, now Baylor's got NBA draft picks in the first round because they have those guys. They finally won the national championship and they could attract that kind of talent. And that's partially true. They could attract that kind of talent for the first time, really, save Isaiah Austin after they won the national championship. But remember, folks, like Jared Butler was not that kind of recruit. Davion Mitchell was not that kind of recruit, even though he played in the SEC at first. Taurean Prince was not that kind of recruit. And he was a lottery pick in the NBA draft before this national championship run. If you remember watching games back then, this is going to sound like a broken record. Fran Fraschilla used to say it every single broadcast. But Taurean Prince out of high school had one D1 offer, and it was to play at LIU Brooklyn as a center. He's on year 10 of the NBA, year 11 in the NBA as a wing shooter. Like, Scott Drew is a magic man when it comes to this. And I think they're going to turn this thing around pretty quickly here. I love the direction that this program is going again with some of these offseason moves. But make no mistake about it. This is an NBA factory. If you want to come and play in the NBA, Baylor is as good an option as you are going to get. Tunde Yesufu, Rob Wright. Like, they'll learn, but the proof is absolutely in the pudding. When you see the active players they have in the NBA and the first-round picks that they churn out every single year. This is mostly just to take a moment and appreciate what Scott Drew has built here. Not just the national championship, because that's what we love the most, right? That's what we will covet the most. But also, I mean, talk about leaving a program better than you found it. That was always a given by about 2010, right, with what Scott Drew had done. But in terms of the NBA side of things, wow, you couldn't have asked for a bigger 180 than this, a bigger heel turn than this. Mark Few and Scott Drew are really the only 2 active college coaches I think that you can say that about, that completely turn their programs around, not just into winners, but into legit NBA factories when no one was expecting it. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. When we come back, Cam Carr is going to Scotty B, the Baylor Kings famed Los Angeles Lakers. I hopped on with the Locked On Lakers guys, telling them exactly what they are going to get with Cameron Carr. And a lot of it has to do with his maturation under Scott Drew at Baylor. That is coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Odoo. You know them well, okay? They are talking about the proper way to run an organization or a business. Because running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that weren't really designed to work together, okay? One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales. That's not the way we need to be doing this. We need one cohesive unit, and that's where Odoo comes in. They are an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone work toward the same goal. And that's true in sports like it is in business. Now, you got me as a Celtics fan here. I'm not going to rave about how great an organization the Lakers are, but I will talk about how great an organization Baylor basketball is by putting all these guys in the first round of the NBA draft. Do you think that happens by accident? No. It's because they're all working towards the same goal. And great organizations like Baylor basketball keep moving forward, and they win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon to try Odoo today.
All right, so the Lakers on Tuesday night in the first round, they take Cameron Carr, move up a spot, throwing some cash at James Dolan because that's what he needs. So they move up just a little bit, and they get the guy that they had their eye on. Certainly somebody who was expected to go a little bit higher in the draft, sort of that late lottery, early post lottery spot, but fell to the Lakers. To learn a little bit more about the guy the Lakers just selected, we're joined by Locked On Baylor host Cam Stuart, who is our foremost expert on Baylor athletics. Thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to get to talk about Cam Carr, man. Good player, better first name, I will say. He's great at picking those. But I genuinely think the Lakers got a bit of a steal here. I'm not going to bury the lead.
Yeah, go ahead. Why?
Yeah, so I just, first off, I think you were probably on this boat too. You guys certainly doing your research. Didn't look like Cam Carr was going to drop out of the top 20. And I was really surprised that he did. And I think the thing that I keep coming back to is he's just the NBA prototype. And I know we say that about a lot of guys every year, especially in this range, outside of the lottery, but before the end of the first round, you're kind of looking for a certain archetype of a player. Cam Carr certainly fits that as a 3-and-D, like to a T, without sounding like a haiku, man. He comes in, he's 6'5", and that doesn't jump off the page at you. But the 7'1" wingspan for a 6'5" guard, that does jump off the page. He can guard a couple of different positions with that, can be disruptive defensively with that. Just got better as a shooter, like every week, it seemed like. 37% from three is nothing to sneeze at, but over 40% from open threes is gonna make you some money in the NBA. And he certainly he did that most of this season at Baylor, and again just kept getting better and better at it. Can be a good transition guy, can play above the rim with that athleticism. He just has the perfect archetype for role player in today's NBA.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. He's also a guy. You talk about the 3-point percentage as a legitimate 37.5% on real volume here. I mean, you're talking about a guy at the college level taking over 6 threes a game. And still keeping, so to take 6 threes a game at about 37.5% and then keep your 2-point percentage up around 50% is pretty good. One thing that I think is interesting about the guy, actually, here's something I want to kind of clear up. I've seen a few different listings of Cam Carr's weight.
Yeah.
I've seen 185 pounds. I've seen 175 pounds. I, for reference, can't see, see the neck up here. I'm about 185 pounds. I'm 8 inches shorter than Cam Carr. Yeah. Watching him play, looking at him, is he lying about it? Which one's the lie? The 175 or the 185? Either way, he's a skinny dude.
Yeah, and that's a great question, man. And obviously we have to think that it's probably the 185. I wouldn't be stunned at that 185 number, but yeah, he's a string bean, right? Like he looks like the second coming of Brandon Ingram out there sometimes. Those long arms and just not a lot of muscle there. I think that's the biggest con for Cam Carr right now is he's got to fill into that frame. And you got to think about now an 82-game season. We talk about this with rookies every year, right? You're coming from a 35 games at best to 82 and playing 3 times a week or 4 times a week rather than twice. And the travel that goes with it. That's something you look at when you see a guy that's that skinny. And I talk about being able to guard several different positions. That's a different animal at the next level. Theoretically, totally, he should be able to do that with the wingspan, his athleticism, his lateral movement, should be able to get there. But you don't get there at 185 pounds. You just don't. And so that is, I think, the biggest thing for Cameron Carr looking at these first couple of years in the NBA. He's just got to bulk up. He's really got to do that. That's going to be the key for me, and I'm obviously for the Lakers, of looking at if this guy is going to be able to take that step and stay on the floor for us defensively. He's got to get stronger. So yeah, it's probably close. It's probably closer to the 175, I mean, guys aren't usually lying the other way, right?
No, when you're younger, you lie up. When you get to be a little older, my age, you always lie the other direction.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine he put on some bulk. He put on some bulk from the end of the season to the combine. But yeah, it's probably closer to the
maybe we'll get back into that a little bit. And the other thing I think is interesting too, and we'll talk about some of his strengths as a player here in a minute, is just the pathway, because you're talking about a guy who spent his freshman and sophomore years at Tennessee, but didn't play. He wasn't a big producer on that team. Only averaged 4 minutes as a freshman, 10 minutes as a sophomore, but only played 4 games. Plays 34 games at Baylor, starts all 34. That jumps up to 33, almost 34 minutes a game. What was the progress like over the course of the season? You kind of alluded to it earlier.
Yeah, it was meteoric, I think, the rise. We kind of got him on our radar in that midseason. He entered the portal midseason and signed with Baylor before the second semester, that right after he left Tennessee. So he got to be, and I think this was crucial, got to be at Baylor and practicing with the team that whole year. One of the big things with Scott Drew, who has built an NBA factory kind of out of nowhere. Nobody thinks Baylor and factory, but they've got 9 or 10 guys in the NBA right now, active players. There's only a handful of schools that are better than that. And so you get that year, that half year of practicing and learning and solely focus on getting better and not playing in front of 10,000 people. I think that's where he got a lot of his work done, because we saw kind of the measurables and, what he was like in high school, and he was a big prospect going to Tennessee, and there was something there. But I think Baylor fans were surprised to see that right away he's in the starting lineup. And right away, he's pretty effective. I talked about the shooting getting better throughout the season, but from the jump, he was Baylor's best player. From the jump, he was this freak athlete who could play above the rim and play beyond the 3-point arc. He kind of jumped right into that role. So clearly, Scott Drew saw something before everyone else did, before Rick Barnes did, and got him on the roster at Baylor and found this diamond in the rough. It's funny, someone did, I don't remember what publication, did a top 500 players to watch in Division I basketball.
Who has time for that?
It's a great question, man. That's 2 for every single team, right?
Oh my God.
And Cam Carr posted about it because he wasn't on it. He couldn't believe he wasn't on it. And I saw it as like, look, Cam, like, we think you're going to be a good player, but like 4 minutes a game or whatever it was, you're not on it. And if they had done a top 50 month or a top 50 list a month later, he would have been on it. Like from the beginning, he really made an impact on both ends for Baylor.
It's interesting, yeah, like because he's sort of talked about as kind of still an underrated player. And so next I want to get into the strengths, and we talked about, I think the physicality is something that everybody points to, the size and the strength. Obviously, at the NBA level, you got to work on that over the course of the next year or two. The Brandon Ingram comp is obviously a great one for Lakers fans to understand, just in terms of the physicality. And we remember BI as a rookie showing tremendous potential, but still, getting knocked around a pretty good amount. And he has obviously turned into, a frontline player in the NBA.
And if you want more insight on Cameron Carr or whoever's playing for Baylor this year, why don't you do yourselves a favor and join the Everydayer Club for Locked On Baylor? That link is in our description. It's lockedonbaylor.supercast.com. Once again, lockedonbaylor.supercast.com. And we're talking about members-only Discord, ad-free audio, all kinds of great perks when you join this exclusive club. That is the Everydayer Club, lockedonbaylor.supercast.com to join today. Welcome back, Everyday John. Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua has been announced as a new assistant coach for the Baylor Bears men's basketball team. Finalizing the staff. It's final, okay? And if you're keeping score at home, you add in this offseason Jake Lindsey to the backroom staff. You add Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua, 2021 national champion, 2022 Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and Jerome Tang, the national coach of the year in college basketball in 2023. And obviously, like half of the greatest combo that Baylor basketball's ever seen alongside Scott Drew. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good offseason when it comes to adding to your coaching staff. We have talked about it so much. I have talked about it so much the last 2-3 seasons, is that there's been a ton of player turnover, but I think what's been just as bad for Baylor is the coaching turnover, right? Like this was such a tight click for so long. And there would be, one guy here would leave, one guy there, it was Mills, and then it was McCaslin a couple of years later. But you'd replenish. But really from 2022, the end of 2022, till the end of 2024, you lost all of them. It wasn't just Mills and McCaslin that were gone, but then you lose Tang, you lose Jacobs, you lose Brooks, you lose Malhotra, who was gone before that, and then went to Jacobs' staff. You lose a ton in that time frame of Scott Drew guys, and guys that Scott Drew leaned on quite a bit. I think that's why he has a great coaching tree, was because he gave a lot of responsibility to these coaches. And while you had good names to fill in, and you had some Baylor guys, you had Bill Armstrong, the prep guy, but now you have Scott Drew guys again. Obviously I talked about, I really like the Jake Lindsey hire for the GM position. And now Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua, who was obviously a fan favorite. I mean, what a player, what an example in his time playing here, but also his last 2 years, he's been with the San Antonio Spurs, man. Like, they probably had to delay this announcement because he was coaching a team in the NBA Finals. Like, we're talking about some real legit experience outside of his time playing with Baylor. Like, this rules, man. And obviously, when you watched him as a player, if he hadn't had the injuries, he'd be playing in the NBA right now if he didn't have that knee injury. But certainly you thought, if he's not going to be playing, that dude is a great fit as a coach. And I think anyone on that 2021 national championship team would have told you that too. I think back to the stories of when they were locked up, during COVID in the spring of 2020, and they They knew they had this great team. The guys pulled out of the NBA draft. And here was this new guy, this center, rim runner from UNLV, who was new on campus. He had practiced with them during the 2019-2020 season. And he was the one that got everybody out. He was the one that got everybody to the gym, in the way that they could. He was the one who was making sure they were bench pressing in the back patios in their apartment buildings, Like, he was the guy that was kind of leading the charge there. And, during his injury, during his rehab, we couldn't even walk yet. He's on the chair shooting, making sure he still had that form. And he became a pretty good 3-point shooter in that last year at Baylor. Like, there's not enough good things to say about Jonathan Tchatchoua. But like a guy who did everything and more of what Scott Drew asked of him, was a terrific leader, a champion for this program. Like, could you have asked for anything better than that? Like, I fully expect Jonathan Tchatchoua to one day be the associate head coach with Scott Drew and one day be leading his own program, if not coaching in the NBA again. I think that's a real possibility for everyday John. Couple that with Tang, couple that with Lindsay, and I love the direction that this thing is going right now. This year, they'll be better than last year. I'll say that. I'm confident in saying that. But I'm talking about like 2, 3, 4 years down the line here. I think if Baylor makes a real commitment and a real investment in men's basketball, the way this thing is going, we could be talking about some good NCAA tournament runs again. And I would go as far as saying, controversial take. I'm not saying they should do this or what, but if they put their eggs in the basketball basket, the way that other Power 4 teams like Duke and Kentucky, to bring them up again, or UConn, the way those schools invest in it, Baylor could absolutely be right there with them on the mantle, the way they were 5 years ago. Or Houston, look at your own conference. Houston invests like that. I'm not saying ditch football entirely, but look, if you're just going to keep spinning the wheels on this freaking football program, just going to keep the same guy in place and just, expect different results, then why don't we put more towards basketball? We got a Hall of Fame coach in basketball. And a heck of a coaching staff and a good roster right now. And, it's a program that puts guys in the NBA every year. Like, you really invest in that the way, again, not BYU, like that's a different stratosphere. You're not getting there financially. But the way that Houston does, the way that UConn does, Duke's the same size as you, better endowment, sure. But, like, you can absolutely run with the big boys all the time. Villanova, man. Villanova's got more success, but they don't have any huge advantage over Baylor, other than they don't have the excuse. Like, it would be silly for them to invest in FCS football, so that's kind of a cop-out. Like Houston, UConn, Gonzaga's like, dude, we don't even want football. But I'm saying, if you invest and really make yourselves a basketball school, you have got the other people in place already. But that might be too controversial, too much of a hot take. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you next week, unless something really crazy breaks on your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.